Alright, hey guys. I'm coming on to tell the last story of my second wife. I've already told you the story of my third wife, my fourth wife, and my first wife. So now we're going to tell you the story of the second wife. I met her after I left my cousin's house and was staying in a little hotel where there was like some Pakistani people who owned it or something. It was kind of a dirty little hotel off of I-25 in Pueblo, Colorado, and I was staying there, paying really cheap rent, and I started working for Color Tile, and I'm my neighbor next to me. I played guitar and stuff, and he used to come listen to me play guitar, and he was like, "Wow, you're really great," and all this stuff. And he had a older friend that he was. She had got a divorce. She was 41. I was 20 at the time. This was 93. This would have been like December of 1993, like that, around somewhere around there. So yeah, I ended up meeting up with her. We met in his room. Her ex-husband had bought her a Cadillac, and she had a 1991 Fleetwood Cadillac, and really nice car, and it was brand new. And he had bought that for her, and she came down from Agular, Colorado, and the first night we met, we had sex first night, and I got up the next morning and went to Color Tile to work and stuff like that, and then I was doing um, like carpet and tile and grout and all that kind of shit. And the guy that was with me, I was only, like I say, 20 at the time, and the guy that I was working for was like 50s, early 50s or something. And he had been doing it for years. And he told me for I don't know why, but for some reason he kept trying to convince me not to do it. And he kept saying you should go find something. Maybe it was because he knew I was smart. I wasn't dumb enough to be doing like, not to say carpet guys aren't smart. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that he could see that I should maybe be in college. I was playing music. I had a lot of skills even at that time. I could do auto body and auto mechanics, and I was a welder and all that stuff at that time. And he knew all that. I had told him that, and he'd seen my application. So I think he was trying to convince me to not do that stuff, because he kept telling me stuff like, this stuff's going to make your back hurt, and you're going to end up with back issues, and you have to use the carpet stretchers, and like there's a kick deal that has like little claws that go into the carpet, and you have to kick it, and that actually stretches the carpet and stuff, and you're able to move it. And you have to use your knee to hit that with and kick it, and a lot of times you end up with carpal tunnels, and basically you end up all fucked up when you get older if you do that all the time. And I think he was trying to convince me not to do it, not to make that a career job, because while you did get decent money for doing it, you would, 20 years later you would wish you had found a new job, a different job. So I finally took his advice, and I had quit, and it was around the new year. It was around 94 in January. My birthday is January 16th. And she said, well, why don't you come live with me? And her husband had built her a house, and after I met her, I realized the house that he built her, this guy didn't know shit about architecture and about architect. He was one of these guys that just kind of like, I'm going to build a room here, and then he's like, oh, let's put a roof on it, and then I'll build a room over there, and then I'll put some stairs here, and a window there maybe. No, I'll put a window over here. That's his idea of architecture. So there wasn't a straight angle on this house. It was like bad, and when you got on the roof actually it dipped in, you know. So I mean, it was a big pile of dump. You know, it was just a piece of crap house. It was bad, and that's why we ended up moving into a bus and like leaving. And we sold the her father's uh, property that had a trailer home on it, and then we ended up selling the house to some people as well, and was able to just leave and start traveling around. But yeah, I moved in with her, and wasn't working, and ended up getting on Social Security when I was with her, and that was shortly before I left her. But had a hard time finding a job because in Aguilar there's really nothing there. And she was a Spanish lady, and it turns out she was molested by her brother when he was in his 20s and she was like 15, and she had a baby. So at the time when I was with her, she had two daughters, and then her daughter contacted her, found her, and had ended up meeting up with us, and she was in her 30s, something like that. And then her other daughter was in her late 20s, and then she had this one daughter who was in her mid 20s, and I was younger than all of them. So yeah, I was I was dating a woman with kids older than me. So yeah, and all of her kids called me grandpa, which was kind of fun. You know, at my age, I was at the time, like I say, I was only 21, and her daughter had one kid, and then her youngest daughter had three kids, and then her oldest daughter had two kids. You know, so I was like grandpa to, you know, six kids. So yeah. So um we were together for almost 4 years. Like I say, I met her in January, and I broke up with her in 1997, um, in like October. It's kind of funny. You might notice a pattern, and I've noticed a pattern my whole life. For some reason, everything seems to happen to me around October in my life. I kind of expect it now. And like now, same thing's happening. My visa for here is up on the 16th. And I'm trying to get like a work visa. I have a friend working on trying to find some place for me to work so I can stay in Japan. And next month is October. So there you go. So yeah, I'm out. I don't know what it is. My whole life, every time October rolls around, I have issues. So, you know, I kind of expect it every year. Every time October is rolling around, I'm thinking like, what's going to happen this year? So we were together. Let's see. When we first met, I moved down there with her to her house. We lived there for, gosh, maybe 4 months, and ended up like she didn't have a job. I found out, and we ended up on welfare because most of the people in that town were on welfare, and so we ended up on welfare. We weren't really making much money, and we ended up getting a stove, cooking stove, like a wood burning stove, really cool one from like the early 1900s or something like that. I don't know, something like that. It had like a big stove in it, and then deals on the top, and then another deal on the top, and where you could set stuff, and like there was a thing to build fire in and all that kind of stuff. And when we first moved there, we didn't have any electricity, and we couldn't really afford to turn it on. And so I think we weren't there very long. This might be this is a long time ago, so I think I'm messing up the story. But I think what happened was we had some friends that were Spanish, and if I remember right, we were staying there for a while. And then I didn't like living there because I couldn't find any work, and that kind of pissed me off. So we moved into Denver where most of her family lived. So we moved to Denver. We were there for a few months. We went to the Reckenbach Cadillac in Denver to get some work done on her car because she had a flat tire on her car and she had like a service plan. And while we were there, we seen this 1979 Seville Opera Coupe that was beautiful. It was this really cool, like metallic blue, and really light metallic blue, kind of like this color, like kind of like a really light blue, and beautiful, beautiful car. Long front nose, two-seater, looked like a Seville, but it was just a two-seater. Had this long nose with wheels on both sides, but they were fake. It was just rims. And beautiful car. One of the most complicated 350 motors ever built. Had so many wires and shit strung out through it, but it was a beautiful car. Only had 16,000 miles on it, and this was in 95, something like that. So it was only a 15-year-old car when we got it. So it wasn't very long. And the guy had him actually come pick it up from his house and trailer it over there. So it was like a really, really nice car. White walls, beautiful car. So we were living in Denver in a hotel. We were kind of bouncing around to hotels, and I was getting work. And she was working at a Pilot truck stop. And I was working at a Pilot truck stop as well. And then I kind of bounced around to different jobs. And that's kind of my problem with my, bipolar and manic depression and stuff. I get a job, really get happy about having the job, and then I lose the job because, after a couple of days, it's not so much fun anymore. So I ended up not really being able to keep a job, and we moved back to her house in Agular in the car, and we were staying there for a little while, and then we came. Like I said, I'm probably messing up the story a lot because it's really fuzzy. You're talking 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, or 20 years ago, right about there. So it's kind of a long time ago, and because it wasn't really that volatile, it's harder to remember it. But we'll just say that somehow I went from living in her house to Denver. We got the car, and then I remember living in her house with that car and going out, and I had we didn't want to scratch the paint. I didn't want to scratch the paint, and I wanted to keep it really nice, so I used to go out and clean it all the time. I loved that car. And I would go out there and chamois it and wipe off all the dust, and then we had a car cover that we put over it, and we kind of took really good care of it. But then we ended up back in Denver in the hotel, and I think we went back up to Denver and lived there. So I think maybe we went to Denver to get something done on our car, got a flat tire while we were driving around Denver, took it to the dealership, bought the car, and then took that car back to Agular, and then came back to Denver to work. I think it was something like that. So while we were in Denver, we weren't apparently making enough money because they expected, since we were paying on the car, I think we had $10,000 to pay on it because they didn't give us much on a trade-in for some reason. They wanted 20, I think 15. They wanted 15,000 for the car, and she had a brand new Cadillac, which I would think it was straight across, but for some reason they only gave her $7,000 or something like that. So I think we had $10,000 or something to pay off on the car. So we couldn't pay for it, and we were staying in a hotel, and they came and picked it up from the hotel and took it. And so she lost her car and her car, which I've never kind of understood that. When you trade in your car and then they end up repossessing it, how they can take your car that you originally gave them for the trade-in and keep that. That doesn't make any sense to me because that car had value. So you traded them straight across. They got their car back and they're going to sell it again for the same price, and they don't give you your car back and they're going to sell that car too. And then all you get to do before that is pay them for 5 or 6 months, $200 or $300 a month plus insurance, and then you don't get your car back, and all you've done is pay to rent their car and to pay for the insurance, and then now they're going to sell your car, the other car again, and leave you with nothing. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand how that's even legal. But there you go. So yeah, we ended up when we left to move to Denver, we ended up leaving some people that lived there, staying on her dad's property, and he was the guys that were there. There was like 4 or 5 guys, and they were young guys, a little bit older than me. They were staying on her property, taking care of the dad's property and stuff like that. And we told them that they would only have to pay. They wouldn't even have to pay us rent. We even told them all they would have to do is take care of our house and pay the water bill, so that we would have water and electric when we came back. So we were in Denver for, I think, 7 months in total. We were staying in Denver. And when we came back, they had tore the house apart. Not our house, but that house, the other house. They had tore it apart. They were supposed to fix it. We wanted them to fix it and do new carpet and stuff. And they were all carpenters, all the guys who were staying there. So they had taken out the toilet out of the thing, and it was sitting outside, and the whole place was just destroyed, and there was shit everywhere. I'm not talking literal shit. I mean just stuff everywhere, just trash, and just the place was like a mess. They hadn't paid the electric bill. They hadn't paid the water bill. So we ended up moving back there, and this is when we ended up buying the stove. We moved back to the house, and we didn't have any electric, no water. And the water bill, I think, was $60 or something like that, $70. So it wasn't that much because our water bill was usually only $10 a month or something. So it was $60 or $70 to get it turned back on. So I had some stuff, and I think we pawned some stuff. And got the water turned back on. And I still had my Vega at the time. So because we didn't have a car, I actually got it running, and we were driving that around. So, when I was up there, I bought a 1980 Malibu station wagon and drove that as well. So we were living in the house, had no electricity, no gas, nothing. So for the first, week. And this was in, I remember it was fucking cold. This was really cold. We were living there, and we had 15 blankets on the bed. So there was this much blanket, and we pulled them over our head, and we were sleeping underneath the blankets in this house in the basement. And that's where that's where the place was that you slept, was in the basement. So that's where her bed was at. So I don't know why we didn't do this in the first place. We slept down there for 2 or 3 nights, and it was just fucking cold. I'm talking 0 down there, fucking cold. We had coats, 2 pairs of pants, 3 pairs of socks, that kind of cold, and still under 15 blankets, and still cold. It was warm, but I mean, you didn't want to get out. So somehow we got a little bit of money. I don't remember what we did, but my brain started working, and her bed was on cinder blocks. So we took it upstairs to the upstairs area because it would be a little bit easier. And then I think we had a folding bed or something like that. I don't know how it worked or something like that. But we were able to get, 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 we a little bit of propane, because we had like 100-gallon propane tank that sat outside. And I think we were able to convince them, because it was so cold or something like that, to give us propane and let us make payments, something like that. So they put some propane in it. They didn't fill the tank, because to fill the tank is like $300 or something like that. So I think they put some propane in it, and it was like $100 worth or something like that. So what we did with it is for about 3 months or 4 months, we slept upstairs in the kitchen, and she didn't have a stove even in this house. It was like the thing, her whole kitchen was made out of like particle board, and it was painted dark brown. This guy was a fucking idiot, her ex. So all she had in her kitchen was a microwave, which we didn't have electricity, and a camping stove that was hooked up to propane. So we had this little 2-burner stove like the ones we have here in Japan. So we were sleeping next to the stove in a house, which could easily have went up. We could have ended up dead like this. But we were sleeping every night in the kitchen, which the kitchen was only, I think, 3 or like maybe 5 feet wide, 6 feet wide. We were sleeping in that spot, me and her, on some kind of bed that we made. I don't know I don't even remember now. It's been so long ago. And we were sleeping next to there, and we had both burners on all night long. And we did that for like 4 months, you know. So yeah, that was dangerous. And then eventually we bought the stove. And when we bought the stove, she had a really nice marble bathtub that was sitting outside in the dirt downstairs. So I went down there, we brought it in, we took it upstairs. I took a little piece of stainless steel and a little thin piece of stainless that we had, and I put it over the hole. And I put duct tape over it, I think, something like that. And then it was sitting in the kitchen by the sliding glass doors, and we had the stove, and it was a big stove, really big stove. So we had this big for a while until that had happened. We were using the 2 burners to heat water in a big pan, and then we'd fill up a big like galvanized pan. And we were living like hillbillies at the time, you know. So we were taking a shower in that. And she was she was a Spanish lady, and she was a little bit heavy set, you know. I'm talking like she was 5'1" or 5'2", and she was about 230 pounds. So she was a big girl, and she was taking the tub was like, I think this wide, and like maybe that long, you know. It was only maybe like 3 feet long and only about this wide. So imagine, you know, she couldn't actually sit down in the tub. I could. I was only 20, but she couldn't sit down in the tub. So yeah. So we brought this marble tub up, and we had that big thing. So I got the idea to put that on top of the stove and fill it up with water and heat it up. So it took us a couple hours to heat that water enough to where it was warm enough to take a bath in. And then we took it over and dumped it in the tub. And we did that about 4 or 5 times. And we had some other bigger pans that were smaller as well that we set up there on the stove. And it took us about 2 hours to fill up the bathtub. And then we were able to take a bath, and then because it was right by the screen door, once we took the bath, we were able to open the door and then use the things to like throw the water outside. And we just kind of ladled outside. So I lived like that for a year and a half with no electricity, you know. So I'm a pretty resilient motherfucker. So, and because of this, this is something that a lot of people don't understand or don't know. When you live with somebody and you don't have a job and you're always living with them, typically you spend more time together than most people would spend in a lifetime, you know, because most people don't do that. They have jobs and they're out doing things, and they only see each other when they come home at night, and they maybe talk to each other and this is before, like, it wasn't before cell phones, but I mean, cell phones back then were like a big box, and it had a thing with like a wire attached to it, and it's like, yeah, so there wasn't cell phones, so there wasn't texting, and internet wasn't even that popular yet. So yeah, this is way before you got mail even, so yeah, so we were living like that for a year and a half, and we finally sold the property, the house that we were in. We sold that property, and I don't know what if when we sold the property. I don't remember if we sold the other property that was her dad's property or something too. I don't remember how it worked, but I actually had my Vega, and I traded it for a 1959 GMC bus. And that's what we went and hung out with the Grateful Dead with. And we took the money that we got from the house, and we bought that, and we just kind of started traveling around and, having fun. And then later on, I got on Social Security Disability, and we ended up, I don't know, about a year after I got on Social Security Disability, I broke up with her. But when I finally got Social Security Disability, I got a back pay, and my back pay was like $8,000 or something like that. I think it took me like a year and a half, 2 years or something to get it. So by the time I got it, I had $8,000 back pay, and I used that, and I had the engine on our bus had blown up, and we ended up in Pueblo, Colorado, broke down with, and we paid to have the motor rebuilt, and it had this really strange 305 V6 in the GMC, and it was really weird. It had spark plugs that come through the top, like where the manifold is, the intake manifold. The plugs were on the inside like that. It's kind of a really weird motor, a very rare motor, they said. And they built it. They had a hard time at the time. They put it all together. I put it in the back in the bus. We broke it all in, and then it didn't even run. We got it to start, and it ended up fucking up, and then they didn't give us money back, and the people that built the motor wouldn't, said it wasn't their fault, so we ended up with a bus that didn't have a motor, that didn't run. And so I ended up finding a new bus that was a 1969 Chevy bus that had a 350 Chevy in it. And at the time I had a really cool car that I had bought while we were in Trinidad, or at Agular. There was an older family there that had this really cool 1964 Buick LeSabre 2-door hardtop that was really cool, and I had that with me. And I had bought in Pueblo a 1966 Pontiac Bonneville. It was a beautiful car, green, and we went out to Kansas in it and stuff like that. It was a really good running car. It was a really, really beautiful car, but it had a intake manifold that blew up, and not the intake manifold, just the head gasket blew up on the way out to the KOA campground that we were staying at. So it blew white smoke, and it was just like, so that car, we ended up taking it to a junkyard, and we could have easily just rebuilt the motor, but at the time I didn't have the money, and I had already spent it all on the bus. So I did a bunch of motor work on the bus and had it like really badass. It was a really cool bus. And we ended up moving back to Trinidad from Pueblo in that bus, and went out to Kansas a few times to see my parents, and stayed on the farm, and did some stuff. And she was, she was a pretty cool lady, not bad. She wasn't too awful crazy. But towards the end of our relationship, as you do, we started having sex less and less, and she was getting the whole time we were together, this is something that you'll find when you date older people, not just women. When men date younger women and when women date older men and vice versa and everything. Um, you tend to have people, those people really tend to have low self esteem. And they constantly are worried that you're cheating on them. So they're constantly going to be like, worried that you're going to leave them for somebody else. And she was doing that. And it was getting kind of annoying. Like, you're going to leave me for somebody else and blah, blah. Every time you talked about a girl on TV, even, whatever, she'd be like, you're going to leave me for somebody younger and blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, it was getting really annoying, and I was 24 at the time, I think, 23 and a half, like something like that. I was October, and then I went to college in 1998, which is when I met my new wife. So this would have been in 97. So 93, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I would have been like, 24, So I decided to one night to kick her out after she was, wanting me to have sex with her, and I wasn't really interested at the time. I was kind of tired, and I was just like, nah, I don't want to have sex. We were staying in the van or staying in the bus in a like campground area in Trinidad, Colorado, and I've told the story before where she like grabbed my dick, and was like, squeezing it and like, just crazy, acting like a fucking idiot. So I just told her like, leave. So that was the end of that. She left, but then she became my stalker. It was kind of weird. I was with several women after her, and she kept hanging around me for about a year, and I actually still had her coming over to my house after I married my Japanese wife. She was still coming to my house because I still had the 64 LeSabre, and I had that up until 6 months before I moved to Japan. I had that car, so it actually was at a apartment complex, and some people that I had hold it for me had some kids come out there and break all the windows in it besides the front window shield. So I had the car, and they wouldn't let you have a car parked there that didn't have a running motor, and we had pulled the motor out because the motor had a broken block. So it was sitting there with no windows in it. We had it all covered up, and I was going to redo it, fix it, and they ended up coming and taking it to a junkyard. They had somebody come pick it up and take it to a junkyard. So yeah, let's see, where was I? Oh, yeah. So I was living in this campground. I had the 64 Impala parked behind the bus. She had a hold of my dick and, doing that kind of shit. And I was like, you're fucking crazy. Get the fuck out of here. So after that, she was stalking me for a while. And I had this girl that I met who was strange lady. And she had a son and a ex-husband who lived in Agular, and I ended up sleeping with her, but she was staying at some guy's house that was trying to sleep with her. He worked for Burlington Northern, so I was sleeping with her in her room in his house while he was out, and he didn't like me, and he wanted to beat me up, and he was like a Sons of Silence guy, and it was like, I after her, I had a really strange life, and I was playing music on the streets. I became like a busker, so I was busking, and after I left her, I ended up like meeting all kinds of people in Trinidad that I'd never met before, mainly because when you're with a girl, they tend to kind of like keep you in a little box, and they don't let you kind of like, find other people and meet other people and have a life. You're kind of like, your life is them, and that's your only life. So once I left her, I actually like met all kinds of really cool people in Trinidad, and yeah. So I left her. after about I've told the story already before of like me going to college, how I got to college and stuff. So if you want to see that, you can watch a video that I did on that. But yeah, I ended up in college after that. Met my new wife, and she actually caught me. She came over to my house one time, and that girl, the girl that had the son and all that stuff, she was older than me again. She was like 38, something like that. I think she was like 38 years old, something like that. And I was hanging out. Her kids were older than me again, or I think around my same age actually, maybe a little bit younger. And I was kind of like hanging around them for a while, for about 4 or 5 months, all the way up until I went into college and met my new wife. And she had came over to my bus and stuff, and had that she was there. That girl was there, so she still kept hanging around me. She still kept trying to get me to come back with her. And at one point, my wife was pregnant, and she came over to my house and seen the car, and her daughter that she had from her rape, had a little Chihuahua, baby Chihuahua that she gave us, and that was my dog basically. I mean, she gave it to her, but she was my dog, So she ended up keeping her just because she knew I loved that dog, and she had brought the dog over for us to watch, because we wanted to that was kind of how she was keeping me in her life, is she kept the dog. So she was still coming over to the house, and we ended up deciding to leave and move to Denver because we wanted to get away from her and kind of get away from the whole, there really wasn't much jobs in there. So we ended up moving up to Denver, had the same issues, and I ended up in Japan. So yeah, so that's the basic story. I'm kind of sketchy with that wife. It was kind of like almost 4 years of my life where it was kind of lame. Like nothing really happened. I mean, a lot happened, but it wasn't really it was kind of a waste. Between my age of 21 to 24, I feel like I just kind of threw away those years. I could have been out doing something really cool, having some fun, maybe doing something really neat, but I ended up doing nothing and kind of being a loser, basically. I mean, it was cool, a cool experience, but I feel like I could have went to college, like I did later. So yeah, I could have been in college. By the time I broke up with her, I could have already had an associate's degree at the time. So, I could have, because I actually went to college in Trinidad, but because I met her is the only reason why I was in Trinidad. But I was in Pueblo, and there was a college in Pueblo that I almost transferred to from Trinidad. So I could have maybe ended up in college there because I got student loans. And at the time, I was only 21. So I could have probably got student loans, but I had to get my, I forget what they call it, the high school equivalency, the GED. I had to get that. So I would have had got that and then go to college like I did. But whatever, it is what it is. So that's the story as much as I can remember. I wasn't on drugs at the time, but the way I've just told this story, you probably think I was, But yeah, so yeah, if you guys want to know any more about this story, I doubt you will. But yeah, I just figured I'd tell that story too. I'll leave it in the comment section below if you want to know any more about it. Share, like, and subscribe. Leave your comments in the section below and stuff. And if you want to see any videos, leave that in the description below. Don't forget that when I get to 5,000 subscribers, I'm going to give away a guitar and some music theory stuff. If you want to make money on your videos, make sure you go to Film Studio TV. It's in the description below. Get your site verified so that you can make some cash. And thanks for watching. Have a nice day.